Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, a lot of strong responses to our LeBron James episode on Tuesday. Plus, we'll open up the Twitter mailbag and answer a bunch of questions, including, does Frank Vogel deserve to be fired? That's next on Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. We get this thing up as early as we possibly can for you, even earlier on game days if you're listening and watching on YouTube, the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel. So please make sure to make us your first listen of every day. We certainly appreciate it. Want to let you know as well, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. We're going to bust open, Andy, the mailbag today. A lot of great questions sent to us at Cam Brothers on Twitter, talking about Frank Vogel, talking about Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, and who else from this godforsaken season might be brought back next year.
Would we want to specifically? Not even will they, would we want to? If we were put in charge, which, by the way, y'all should want us in charge, because I think we'd do well.
If nothing else, the official Lakers podcast would be awesome.
Yeah, we wouldn't have made the Russell deal. We would not have made the Westbrook deal. Loyal listeners will recall, Brian, about a week before the Westbrook deal, there were rumors percolating that this could be something the Lakers were interested in, and we dedicated an entire
episode
to the idea of just the rumor. Like, that makes no sense for either one of those teams.
How stupid it is. And it was really one of our highest trafficked episodes ever. So apparently a lot of people agreed. Now, if we were in charge, maybe everybody would be sitting here yelling at us about Buddy Hield, but they wouldn't be yelling at us about Russell Westbrook. So we'll do that. We'll talk about LeBron James. A lot of really interesting responses to the show we did on Tuesday, talking about whether or not LeBron is stat padding, which is something that I think a lot of angry Lakers fans have said over the last few days, and speaks, I think, really to the equity, how much equity he has with Lakers fans, or may not have, really. But let's start here, Andy, because the Lakers are in Minnesota Wednesday night. This used to be one of those freebie games on every extended road trip, the one where you chalk it up as an easy win, and this will be where the Lakers can make a little hay, get ready for the real games on the trip or whatever. Oh my, how times have changed.
Yeah, the Lakers are getting the first game after Karl-Anthony Towns put up 60, which obviously 60 is a big number, but I did some looking through Basketball Reference. Maybe I'm missing something, but that is, in terms of me going through this, the biggest number by any true big man since Shaq in 2000 when he put 61 on the Clippers. Ever since then, it's all guards and wings and wilt. That's it. So it really speaks to just how incredible and versatile and dominant, talented a scorer Cat is.
And, the Timberwolves have won 8 of 10. They are now 10 games over 500. They are in the 7th spot in the Western Conference, a game and a half behind Denver. A game and a half behind Denver for 6, as least on as we sit down to record this one. They are going in the right direction, and it's just it's so funny to me, Andy, because we get a lot of responses from people when talking about what could be coming for the Lakers. And a lot of it is just blow it up and start over. Get rid of AD, get rid of LeBron. This core isn't going to be able to get us where we need to go, especially when you consider they have no other draft picks. They have all of it. It's actually not an unreasonable proposition. Blow it up and start over. And you could think, well, look at Minnesota. They're 10 games over 500. They've got Anthony Edwards. They've got Karl-Anthony Towns. They've got some other good young players. They're moving in the right direction. But good God, Andy, think how long the Timberwolves have been out in the wilderness to get to this point where, they're a solid team, 10 games over 500, but nobody thinks of them as a title contender.
No, but
It's
they could
hard.
be. They could be moving finally in the direction of a title contender. The odds don't favor it because the odds really don't ever favor anybody but the truly obviously elite teams. And the Timberwolves right now seem to be moving in the right direction, but there have been a few periods over like the last 20 years where it's felt like the Timberwolves were moving in the right direction. Then it became really clear, no, they're not, and they never
same
are.
direction.
Yeah.
But usually though, that's when the Wolves are like, oh look, they're pushing 500. Like they've broken through in terms of being like a legit, solid, good team, and well coached and all that kind of stuff. But there's still a long way from a title. I don't mean to say that as like a slam in any way on Minnesota. I think they're one of the most fun young teams in the league. I only point that out to illustrate like it is hard. It is really hard to go from scratch to title contender, to rebuild it in the way that I guess some people wish they could have. D'Angelo Russell kind of reuniting with D'Lo again in this game. There are still a lot of people kind of look back and wonder what would have happened if Lakers just more or less left it alone and kept it together. And
Brian, that I'm one of those people. I really enjoyed the core with the kids as they were referred to, and obviously you don't regret the moves that they made to bring in. They cleared cap space to have room for LeBron, and they cleared some cap space that was supposed to be for Paul George. Didn't happen, but eventually they made moves that led to Anthony Davis, and all that led to a title. So by definition, it all worked. Eventually you're going to have to pay that bill, and it's becoming really clear.
And they wouldn't have been able to pay all of these guys. And so,
right. But I'm just saying there is always going to be a part of me because I liked that group as players. I liked them a lot as people. Like I enjoyed them. They were a fun, like collective of personalities, but also too, as somebody that's an actual fan, there's always going to be a part of me that wonders what it would have looked like, because there's something different about rooting for a homegrown group brought up together. Like that is really, really fun. And I'm not saying that the 2020 championship wasn't fun, because we've talked, Brian, all the time about how that group was one of the most likable teams we've ever covered. Like they were really enjoyable to be around,
especially for a quote unquote, super team that was constructed, the way that NBA fans really hate when teams like the Lakers do it, where
it's the mercenary route.
Right. You get LeBron to sign with you. You trade all your stuff for the star who forces his way out of town from the little small market team to the big one, forgetting that Anthony Davis gave plenty of time to the Pelicans to get good. They were a, to use the Byron Scott terminology, they really were a hard hat team, and fun and enjoyable personalities. You're right. They didn't have that feel of a mercenary team.
And this is what's also really interesting about this when it comes to the Lakers, because the Lakers are very overtly and proudly one of the most ready-made organizations, like not just in the NBA, but sports. Like they are not a team that ever looks to rebuild. They consider themselves always in championship or bust mode, even when it is totally unrealistic, even at like during times like the last few years of Kobe's career post Achilles, where they were making moves that actually crippled their quest to eventually become good again. And they managed to get draft capital in spite of their best efforts. If you look
they were not, just a reminder, they weren't tanking.
No.
They were trying to win.
Oh, they were desperately chasing 8 seeds and falling ass backward into lottery picks. But if you look at their scouting department, which is, I think, hands down the strongest part of this organization, and Brian will agree with me, very well respected across the league.
This is true.
Scouting department. If you look at the series of draft picks that they had for roughly 7-8 years, guys going from lottery picks to second rounders to guys that were undrafted, just talent they spotted.
Hold that thought for a second, because you're gonna give some names, and that gets to a point that I think is really germane to this conversation. So hold the list, because it's a great list. Okay. And we'll get back to it next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Prize Picks. Okay, Laker fans, you've been hearing me tell you about Prize Picks for months. You signed up yet? Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Come on, do it. You are going to love this app, plus the mixed sport pick'ems option. So for a limited time, here's the deal. No brainer of an offer for all our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point, like 1 point. Go for LeBron right now. He is clearly source of controversy, but he's obviously looking to score. Got to use though the code NBA.
Adding.
Right. You can hate win your bet. You can win your bet, hate what LeBron's doing, but still come out richer. But it's an exclusive offer for Locked On fans who use the code NBA. PrizePicks has the best DFS prop game on the market. PrizePicks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator, offers superstar players as well as bench players that only get like a couple minutes per game. And they do mixed sports entries. Like you could do the over on LeBron points with the under on, I don't know, innings pitched by Clayton Kershaw, because baseball is coming back. Use the award-winning app on the App Store or Google Play. You can do these picks in 60 seconds or less. It's really easy. It's safe, fast withdrawal. So again, prizepicks.com. Use the promo code NBA or go to the App Store, download the app. If you are not playing Prize Picks, you don't know what you're missing.
Okay, so, obviously on the current team, the Lakers have Talen Horton-Tucker, who, regardless of whether or not you think he is a star in the making, whatever he is, like he's a legitimate NBA player who's going to play for a little while, and that as a second rounder is a win. They have Austin Reeves, who they found as an undrafted free agent. That is a win because he looks like he's going to be a legitimate NBA player going forward. They had Alex Caruso, who they found, and all that. But like the track record, Andy, that you were talking about really kind of goes back to the post rebuild after the Dwight Nash fiasco thing. And it's a strong record.
Yeah. These are just the guys that off the top of my head, I was thinking about when you and I were discussing this. Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance Jr., Julius Randle, D'Angelo Russell, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Josh Hart, Ivica Zubac, and then the three guys that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
They're guys that were at the top of the first round, guys that were at the bottom of the first round, guys in the second round,
Ingram?
guys.
If I apologize.
I did say BI, yeah.
Okay.
The commonality with all those guys is they are all legit NBA players. Some of them have been all-stars, some have been all-NBA. BI's one most improved down the line, but they are all
Sixth man of the year in Jordan Clarkson.
Sixth man of the year, but they are all quality NBA players. And if you look at, the list, for example, like you could say Jason Tatum would have been a better pick than Lonzo Ball. Fine. Lonzo ain't a bust. Lonzo is a legit good NBA player. The Lakers are really good at spotting talent. And the irony of it is, as difficult as rebuilding is under any circumstances, much less the ones the Lakers would be attempting to do it in now, after all the pain, everything that they gave up to get AD and having to scrape back that capital, just on paper, they are as well equipped as any organization in the NBA to actually attempt a real rebuild, but they just would never do it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll push back a little bit. I agree with you that they have people that would make draft choices that I would be confident in. They are probably as poorly equipped from an infrastructure standpoint in terms of the stuff that it requires, in terms of, having flexibility, having, things you can trade for other picks. Like
I said, after you scrape,
right.
but my point though is in a vacuum, like get yourself back to 0.0 where you would have the ability to start a rebuild. That's my point. They'd be as good at doing it as anybody in the league.
I think that's they have a great track record for drafting players. I think that's absolutely true. And certainly they'd be able to, still, as much as the historic advantages of the Lakers as a free agent destination may be diminishing, they're still, it's not like they're gone. It's not like people don't want to play for the Lakers or don't want to play in LA. It's just, getting to that neutral point, to that 0 point, as you kind of put it, is going to be really difficult to do. And so that is the dilemma that Lakers fans will find themselves, and the Lakers will find themselves once the season is over, in trying to make that decision of, is it worth blowing it up? And part of the reason I think ultimately they won't is just because it's too hard. Like, you have AD and you have LeBron and it's imperfect, but it's too hard to find something else. Speaking of LeBron, before we
No
open
doubt.
up
And
the
by the way,
mailbag,
real quick, if assuming they move long term with AD and they clear cap space, you can find guys that will play for the Lakers with AD.
oh yeah,
They're just the separate questions that we've discussed before. We'll discuss again about AD as your centerpiece and all
as a
that stuff.
centerpiece, what else? And they just and they don't have a lot of the stuff to build a middle class of a team, which we
Mhm.
we kind of referenced earlier in the week, and we've seen how important that is. Like they need that stuff too, and so a lot to think about. But part of the the thing, this question is really about LeBron, and I think he's going to come back. I think he'll sign an extension. I think the Lakers should ultimately probably sign him to an extension, and that's probably how it's going to go. I think I could be talked in and out of that a bunch of times, but the response that we got to Tuesday's show about the question of whether or not LeBron is stat padding. Um, to reiterate, I think no. I think he's just playing. I mean, either if he plays, he's definitionally stat padding. And if he sat, he'd be doing something that I think is far worse. Um, but a lot of people went right back to it. And it really speaks to the equity that he hasn't really been able to build and probably never could build in what still amounts to Kobe City. Not that the people don't love him, not that they don't appreciate him or any of that, but I think they can kind of take or leave LeBron in ways that they maybe other stars that have been with the Lakers. It's different.
Well, that to me, by definition, means they don't love him.
Mhm.
Like you can't take or leave him, but also love him. And I think some of this is LeBron's history, sort of tangentially connected to the Lakers before he became a Laker and all the comparisons to Kobe, which really weren't LeBron's fault, I guess, other than allowing
Nope.
himself to be marketed by Nike as Kobe's rival with the puppets and all that stuff. Like none of this was LeBron's fault, but also some of this is his entrance to the Lakers was messy
Mhm.
and kind of aloof. And his first season with the Lakers was messy and kind
Kind
of
of aloof.
aloof.
Yeah.
And the year that they won a championship, LeBron was exceptional as a leader, and both with the team and especially what he did, helping lead them through maybe the most painful moment, if not in franchise history, certainly since Magic's announcement of
Mhm.
HIV, with Kobe's death,
Yeah, I
and
would agree.
that was a lot on LeBron's shoulders. And that was also as connected as he's ever seemed to a fan base that was slow to embrace him. Since then, it's slowly devolved back to messy and aloof.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
thought
it's a
last
reminder
year.
that again, the mercenary.
Yeah, last year I thought was fine. Like I don't think a lot of people were blaming it, but he got hurt again, and that arose. And this year, look, the biggest criticism you can make of LeBron is just that um the body language, the way he carries himself as a leader in bad times. Um we probably won't need to do it now because we can get to the mailbag, but like there's a debate to be had there and a conversation to be had there about how much like normal human psychology should apply to LeBron too. But also part of the reason that they're in the situation that they're in is because LeBron pushed for a trade that has not worked. And I think it's fair, has sort of wanted to avoid a little bit of the accountability of that and the fallout from it. It's a conversation we'll have many times going forward and into the off season. But the context of LeBron as a star is different than it is with other ones, and certainly I think you could say the same about Davis, who through his play probably hasn't ingratiated himself as much to Lakers fans as expected. Again, I'm not saying everybody hates LeBron, everybody hates AD. That's not what I'm getting at. But it's just not. There's just a
Well,
little something there where it hasn't clicked in a way that Lakers fans, to the percentage you might have otherwise expected, would ride or die with both of these guys.
well, you got to remember too, other than the one season where they won a championship was, that was the best we saw of LeBron, the best we saw of Anthony Davis. And those guys are in many different ways, right down to the agency that pushed to get them together and is very rightly seen as influential over the organization. It's never been as good for either one of them as that one season, which makes them both feel, again, more like that mercenary, the two leading mercenaries on this team. And remember, there was going to be a point where it was supposed to be LeBron, AD, and Kawhi, where you'd have just the full-on, straight-up Expendables Voltron version of this team, which,
for sure,
if it wins,
I would have
ain't
liked
nobody
to
going to
have
complain.
right.
But there's not the emotional connection to it.
Exactly. All right, let's open up the mailbag, Andy, and ask. We'll start with the question: does Frank Vogel deserve to get fired? Not Willie. Does he deserve it? Next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Built Bar. All right, everybody hates trying to eat right. Like, it just, you're supposed to do it. It's like seeing a doctor. You go, but man, everybody despises being there. Built Bar, though, makes eating right easy and enjoyable. Have you tried the puffs? If you have not tried them yet, you are missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting items. They are protein infused marshmallows. First ever. They're fluffy, marshmallowy. They're a treat covered in 100% real chocolate. You got awesome flavors like cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. Again, covered in 100% real chocolate. Most candy bars like 200 to 300 calories a pop. That is a lot of empty nothing. But most Built Bars are only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. And that is what you want. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at built.com.
Okay, so let's start here with the Twitter mailbag at Cam Brothers from George at George Santiago. Taking away the contract situation, do you think Frank Vogel should be fired? I feel that most people believe that he's dead man walking because he only has a year left under contract and forget the fact that he did win the Lakers chip less than 2 years ago. So first things first, we both agree Frank Vogel is going to be fired. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. With that settled, does he deserve to be fired? Because they are two different questions.
I don't know about deserve. I don't know if I would put it as strongly as deserve, although I don't think this has been Frank Vogel's best season coaching, even acknowledging all the different things that he's dealt with that were not his fault, right down to the roster that he would not in a million years have constructed. As we've discussed many times, I don't think he's played a bad hand as well as he possibly could have. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think he should be fired, whether he really deserves to or not, because this situation is not tenable anymore.
Yes.
I don't think you can bring back Frank Vogel, even if you think, hey, Frank Vogel is a better coach than what we've seen this year, or hey, Frank Vogel's getting done dirty here. It doesn't matter. You can't bring him back after every bit of non-support that was offered this year, right down to the fake extension.
Right. And especially if you think you might have any, you have LeBron back. I mean, it's not a guarantee that they can get off the Westbrook contract. Like, there's a possibility that something that looks kind of like this could be the team next year. I agree with you. I don't think he deserves to be fired, in the sense that, like, job performance has been egregiously bad, below the standard that you would expect. But you can't bring him back. You just can't. Because of everything that you said.
It's a lot, Brian, like Luke Walton's last year coaching the Lakers, and I think Frank Vogel is a better coach than Luke Walton.
I agree.
But it was very clear Magic did not believe in Luke at all. And it was very clear that the organization, Jeannie loves Luke on a personal level. She was not going to get in the way of this. By the time that Luke's last season was winding down, you couldn't bring him back.
Yeah. And you can't go into a season with this thing being a constant talking point from the minute you open training camp. It's just, it's like the word you used, untenable, is the exact right one. And we'll do this from Chef Marco. Tell me an NBA team at Chef Marco 19. Tell me an NBA team that's whose fan base wants Russell Westbrook next season, even with 2 first-round picks. There is no market for him. He will be stuck on the Lakers next season, or they stretch his contract. That's not a question. It's a statement, but we'll respond to it anyway.
I mean, I don't know if anybody wants him. I mean, let's be honest. I don't think. I mean,
if once from the fan base, if like some GM has to take a poll before they can execute the trade, he's going to be a Laker next year or bought out. But once, fortunately, from a fan base standpoint, doesn't have much to do with it. It's the 2 first-rounders.
Yeah. I mean, unless OKC is that fan base is feeling super sentimental. Yeah, it's going to be what can you attach to Russ to make it work? And then, what's the Lakers end game? Because I am not into the idea of stretching his contract. I think that is going to be pain that will not be worth the short-term benefits. Like a larger exception for 1 year, I don't think is worth having 2 years of that size of dead money on your books. I think it's a bad idea. I would rather buy Russ out and have have that dead money for this
1 year. Yeah, I agree. I am not convinced. I know you've talked about, other people have too, that, his expiring contract makes it a little easier to trade. I guess all of these things are true, but, it is going to be expensive to get away from that deal, and painful. And I don't think the market is not going to be strong for Westbrook. I do hope, though, if they can do it, that they can break it up into smaller components, even if those players aren't guys you necessarily would want really bad. Just having 3 guys who make 17 million is so much better than having the one who makes 47.
Okay. Speaking of that really quick, I did a cursory look around some rosters, and this is all just fake ideas. None of this is like anything that I think is actually going to happen or I've heard is going to happen, whatever. I just started looking around at teams that might have some stuff that they would look to get rid of and would maybe be willing to just take Russ for, again, a year, buy him out, whatever. One would be the Knicks for a return of Evan Fournier, Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel. Most of those contracts go to either 2024, maybe one that's like 2025.
Fournier was signed to a 13-year contract.
Something like that. But, those are 3 guys that could have a reasonable fit for LeBron. Like you said, more movable pieces, more flexibility. Then there was Orlando, who, as always, has a just effed up roster because it's what they do.
Lots of cap room, very few expensive players.
Well, they got 2. Here's a possibility I thought of with the Magic. And again, the idea that they would just want to lump their bad stuff into one guy with Russ. Jonathan Isaac signed through 2025, difficulty staying on the court, can't get him vaccinated, which could be problematic depending on where things
maybe
stand.
Next year. But the biggest issue is he's not going to play this year. They've already, the Magic announced, I believe it was on Tuesday, that Isaac is out for the year.
Can't stay on the court. I don't always think he's necessarily a locker room fit.
Also not sure how good he is.
Markelle Fultz, another guy that's had difficulty staying on the court. He has these brief flashes, but gets hurt a lot. He's signed through 2024, Isaac through 2025, and then Terrence Ross has an expiring.
I mean, I don't know if I love either one of these things because, again, you're still probably forced to give up the picks because, again, why else is Orlando doing that?
Well, they would want to consolidate their books.
No. But they're not going to. No team is going to do that just for the single contract.
Well, maybe you only have to give up 1 pick as opposed to 2.
Maybe
the
point is you still got
deals.
You still got to add to it.
Sure.
Or because they can trade those guys for something else. It doesn't just have to be for Westbrook. So, I got to think about either one of those things. I can't say either excites me, but
they shouldn't.
The larger point that you're making here is that there is no, I like that deal out there. Let's do that. And it is, you have 2 painful choices. Your painful choice A, suck it up, keep Russ. I guess you have 3. Suck it up and keep Russ and just struggle through the year, or buy him out and have a $47 million hole in your sheet, but you're gone. It's over in a year. You could stretch him. I agree with you. I don't think that's a good idea at all, because now you're just extending the pain for 3 years instead of 1. Or you can make a deal like that makes you just go, ugh, and have enough faith that you could red paper clip your way to Jonathan Isaac being something better, or Evan Fournier being something, who's not a terrible player. He just hasn't worked in New York, and is probably overpaid. I don't know. I got to think about all of these, but the larger point isn't the specific players. It's the Sophie's choice that you have here.
Look, we'll end up talking about this, Brian, at greater length many, many times. But I actually think the suck it up for a year option kind of underrated.
I agree with you. I actually completely agree with you. Unless you have a really good way of putting Humpty Dumpty back together, you might just be better off sucking up and keeping those picks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Lakers versus Minnesota. Very different game than people might have anticipated at the beginning of the year. I am actually kind of excited because I like watching the Timberwolves. We'll get to that. We some more mailbag questions we didn't get to. Lots more to start thinking about as the Lakers limp towards the end of the regular season.
Oh, and fans of 710 ESPN, Greg Bergman, Corporate Greg, will be joining us on Thursday. He will be our guest to talk a little Lakers. We're going to talk some winning time as well. So you got that to look forward to.
Again, Locked On Lakers, your first listen of every day. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. We'll see everybody on Thursday.